we have adapt to it, be ready for it, resist it, how to deal with it. Change isn't always easy and can be difficult, and change is necessary to grow.
Yeah. All right. Good podcast.
And we're done, guys. And that's it, folks.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Our
All right.
2 seconds.
What?
Our 2-second TED Talk.
Hey, it works. I could put this up as a short still. It's under 2 minutes. It's not bad. Hell, I could even send that in to my editor, dude, and it only cost me $30 for him to edit it up.
Anyhow.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Finding Equilibrium. One of our co-hosts, Jamie, couldn't be here tonight, so we are gonna have her back hopefully next week. This week we are talking about a lot of people's probably least favorite topic, and that's change, because nobody really likes facing change, and it's not always fun. It can be, but for the majority of people and majority of the time, it's kind of shit. We've got, 4 or 5 talking points, kind of things that we're going to hit on, but not really focus 100% on them, I guess. I guess, you want to start off with how you guys deal with change, or if you enjoy it, or how you kind of view it as a
Sure.
whole first?
Sure.
Yeah, change for me is not fun. It is very difficult. Just because I have it set in my head how I think what's going to happen, and if when plans change or things change abruptly, I freak out. I have like a mini mental breakdown, because change just, it's never been easy. Dealing with something that could be something big is, for me personally, it's just not fun. I kind of have to learn how to go with the flow, but it's very hard for me to go with the flow. It's just not fun for me.
For me, I don't like change, but I 9 times out of 10 have a plan B, C, D, E, F, G, all the above, like all the way to Z. Normally, that's just how my brain works. I do, like you, have kind of a freak out about it, because I live my life by a schedule.
Yeah.
Routinely by a schedule. Like, this is what I'm doing at this time and this time. And yes, my life very much revolves around a schedule, and change within that schedule is kind of frustrating, specifically with work. You and I can kind of touch on this for a second. Our routine day doesn't change. Like, we come in and, as we previously talked about, like, we have a routine of what we do. Like, we, check our emails, check the system, follow up on voicemails, blah, 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 blah. All those things that are pretty routine and don't really change.
Yeah.
But the prospects or the residents or the, whatever situation may come is always different at work. Like, it's never the same.
Which, in that aspect, I will say is fun, so it's not too monotonous. You have a little bit of a challenge. But as far as, like, our timeliness of how we do things and, like, our routine throughout the week of, okay, Monday we're doing our Monday huddle, and then, Tuesday you might have a meeting, and then Thursdays you might have your meetings, but, like, Wednesdays we have our, like, I feel like for the most part during the week we have, like, a set thing that we do each day. So that doesn't really change a whole lot, but, like, having the fun thrown in of something going maybe a little bit funkier, a little bit crazy is fun in that aspect. So
Yeah, I agree.
small changes like that, I guess, is fun to kind of break up the monotony of the day or the week, but big changes.
I guess, like, outside personal life, I guess, I like pretty much consistency, I guess, like schedule and things like that. I don't like when we have plans and then they change for, I don't know, whatever reason that could be. I mean, the kid, or it's raining, or, whatever.
That's definitely something that you've had to kind of learn to deal with, because
I'm not like a
obviously having-
spontaneous person
No,
either.
not at all. But having a 2-year-old, it kind of forces you to, because sometimes, not sometimes, but all
Excuse
the
me.
time, and I'm kind of a prick about it, where I'll situate the whole day around his schedule, because that's the one thing that, like, I'm very routine on is his schedule. Like, I get annoyed if we eat dinner 30 minutes late. I get annoyed if he goes to bed 15 minutes late, because I know the repercussions of those.
Yeah.
So that aspect of the routine is kind of what me personally I harp on.
Well, I mean, but that part of our routine per se doesn't just affect us. It also affects
No,
him.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, before we had him, like, obviously it was, okay, we're going to go here. We got to leave here at 11:15. With him, it's okay, yeah, well, this is going to roll into X, Y, and Z, so instead of going now, we're just going to go later. And then 9 times out of 10, you get upset by it. Like, not upset, but you kind of get annoyed, and that just stems from the fact of you needing that very structured routine where it's
Yes.
like 3 weeks ago you knew we were supposed to do this, but it was literally, it could just be like going to the grocery store or something. Like, you know that we need to go to the grocery store, so you have it in your head that you want to go now, but it doesn't necessarily work that way sometimes because other stuff comes up.
Right.
Or trying to get him out of the house is just a miserable experience because he's either tired or hungry or whatever, so we have to push it back, and that kind of throws you off. But sometimes we still follow through with it, and then it's a miserable experience.
But not
And then-
all the time.
not
There
all-
are some times, like when we went to the Harvest Festival.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Most of the time, it's not bad. Like, he's not a terrible kid. He's very easy to work with.
Yeah.
But I'm talking more like around like the structured times of like his nap and when
Well,
he
and
goes
a
to
lot
bed,
of,
when he
I think
eats
that
and
the
stuff like that.
change per se in our routine there would specifically just be the fact that he naps. I mean, as far as food goes, run to McDonald's, whatever.
No, yeah, and that's what I mean.
But I
like,
think the majority of it is just his nap.
yeah, because I mean it's hard to, especially like on the weekends in the morning, like anything after 10 o'clock is kind of scuffed because that's when he starts getting tired, but he's not ready to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then if he doesn't eat lunch at the same time, like we have the same schedule that he's got at
School.
because that's what he's used to 5 days a week. So we just keep that going. Now, granted, that doesn't always work because there's days that he doesn't go down until like 2 o'clock. But
Well,
that's
there's
'cause he doesn't
also
want
days
to.
that he doesn't wake up until later, but then there's days that he wakes up at the crack of dawn
Yeah.
too. So I mean, it just kind of, you know.
So maybe like day-to-day slight changes may be difficult, but I think, and I know this for you is like when you have something planned out like weeks in advance or like a month in advance and you have it in your head, all right, on this day we're going to do this, at this time we're going to do this is how it's going to go. So like for Chris, she had her fall festivities, holiday festivities planned out. We were going to have a movie night this one night, and then she goes, oh, by the way, the kid has
Trunk or
and
treat.
then
Trunk or
we have to push it back an hour.
For me, I was like, okay, well, that's fine. But for her, she's like, oh, no,
Uh-huh.
I have to push everything back. I have to do this and that. So I think for, like, us, I could say, is, like, when you plan something far in advance and you have it a set way in your mind of how that's going to play out, how it's going to go, you have it detailed, nitpick, like, how it's going to go. Like, have popcorn and we're going to have cider and we're going to do this, and then everyone gets here and it's like, yeah, I don't want popcorn. Yeah, I don't want cider. Can we just have like soda and chips or something? It's like,
Yeah, it's not what you had.
No.
and we were going to watch this one movie, but no, you know what? Never mind. Let's change it to this movie instead. Like, for me, that's what really gets under my skin is like when you have something pictured in your brain of
And it
how it's
doesn't work
going to
out.
go, and then all of a sudden it just changes. Which, I mean, I get because it's a majority of the people type thing, but still, like, something like that.
It's so annoying. It is
Oh,
so annoying.
man.
I don't like it. What about you? We've talked about us. What
I'm
about
the
you?
polar opposite. Change does not bother me. I am the least, like, of course I need to have structure because if I don't have structure, then I'm probably the laziest person in the world and I can watch YouTube for 6 hours. But I know if I've got stuff that I've got to get done, then of course it's got to get done. That takes precedence. But like in general for like day to day, whatever, I really don't care. Just go with the flow. Like I could care less.
I feel like the two of you agree. Like, tell me your thoughts here. I feel like there's sometimes I can be go with the flow
Sometimes.
in certain I don't want to say aspects, but like I guess aspects, like certain things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some times that you're more relaxed, but I mean, like with work and stuff like that. Obviously, I work for myself, so every day is different. Like that's the one thing that I enjoy. Like, I cannot go do the typical punch the clock where everything is the exact same every day. I get so bored, and even owning my own business, like I love owning my own business. I don't love what I do anymore owning that business.
But you're so good at it.
I know. And I mean, there's reasons as to why I keep doing it is because I've done it for 13 years now. I'm a professional at it, and I make way more money than I could at any job that I go get. So, I mean, it's one of those things that, do I want to keep doing it? No. If I had the opportunity to drop it tomorrow and start something brand new, absolutely. But the logistics of it doesn't work that way. But I'm also...
It's all messed up.
Hmm?
It was all messed up.
It's from the kid. Like, I'm also cool with just changing everything up every day. And I don't do well. Like, I do great with structure because it's needed for everybody.
Oh, yeah,
But
definitely.
I also hate structure to a degree because I get so burnt out on something if I'm forced to do the same thing day in and day out. And that also comes into play with, like, starting different shit. I can't tell you how many different, like, business ideas and stuff that I've started, and I'm gung-ho about it and all that, but then after a while, and, like, I understand trying to build something from the ground up, it's obvious that, like, the monotony is going to come, and you have to kind of get through that. But that point is when I kind of filter out how much I love something, and if it's enough, do I love this enough to deal with the monotony? Is the monotony enough for me to basically deal with it?
But I
And-
think between, like personally, I think between the two of us, I'm more laid back and you're more high strung. In the grand scheme of, I don't mean about our relationship, about our like husband and wife, parent to our, parents to our child. I mean, in like personality wise in our everyday life, I feel like you're more high strung and I'm more laid back, and you being more high strung, it kind of enables you, I guess, to deal with change a little bit better.
Well, so it's not, and I know what you mean by that. It's not that I'm high strung. It's
Maybe that wasn't the right word.
it's the fact that, and so we're talking about, like, on the big grand scheme of things, like minute change and daily stuff. Also, after this, I want to kind of get your take on, like, major life changes and changing yourself as a person to grow and develop and all that. But so that kind of, I'll tap into the larger scale change and growth and all that. I thrive off of evolving, and I'm always not really high strung, but focused on the larger pictures of everything, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because it's like I try not to be with, like, you and the kid, but I'm a very intense person when it comes to, like, life in general. Like, working with me, majority of the time, people that work with me absolutely fucking hate it, because when it's go time, it's go time. Like, I'm all for fucking off and putting off work and doing this and getting out of doing it, but when we've got tight deadlines and shit to do, then it's not fun. Like, that's also why the last person that I was in business with that was working for me, that ended after 4 months?
Yeah.
Because he couldn't handle it. And I mean, obviously there's other things that went into it that he wasn't, like, thrilled with business wise, but at the end of the day, it's my name on the
Right.
license. Like, we were partners, but not equal partners. And when we've got 5 houses to get done for a builder, and we've got X amount of time to get them done, if that means that we work on a Saturday, then that means we work on a Saturday. Now, it's a little different now because it's a one-man show, so I make my own schedule, and I know what I'm capable of getting done in the allotted time for the day. So I'm not gonna kill myself with it, but if I have to, I will. Like when I was doing the daycare and stuff, it turned in from a 1-room job to 15,000 square feet.
And then I
of
helped
work.
paint a little bit.
But I mean,
That was fun though. On a side,
but
side
it's
topic.
also that also stems from the fact that like I'm cool with change so much because I have to be, especially when it comes to like business, because the game plan for like the last house that I did for the realtor, that went from a 2-day job to about a 2-week job, and anything that could go wrong did go wrong. Like it was just, I mean, and yes, I was bitching the whole time, and I'm glad that I was the only person in that house because I was pissed 90% of the time I was doing that job because it's just one thing after another.
It wasn't the realtor's fault. It was just the
It's
the
just
circumstances
the
of the
beast.
home.
Yeah, it's just the nature. It's just the nature of the beast. Like that's also what kind of keeps me going with owning my own business painting, because I don't do well with knowing what my day is going to look like.
But you could also be opening up a can of worms, which could sometimes, like we were talking about, like the thrown in little hiccups and things. It kind of is good because you don't know what the can of worms is going to entail. But
Yeah.
it's also, for you personally, like owning your own business, it's also going to make you more money.
Sometimes.
The majority of the time.
Majority
I
of the
think
time it does, because then it trails into upselling a job by 60%, which is exactly what happened with the last big job. And I mean, hell, the last small job that I did that I was painting that 1 room, it was a 2-day job that should have had 8 hours in total in it and turned into almost a 40-hour job over a course of almost a full week.
Yeah.
And that was just because nothing fucking went right. The paint didn't want to lay right. There was just light spots. I couldn't get shit to cover. The only way I could get it, because it was like plywood, the only way I can get it to work is if I covered the damn trim. So then I had to go back and take 2 hours cleaning and scraping and fixing trim because I couldn't tape it. Like,
But I mean, overall, like for you, your can of worms is, it's not even you upselling a job. It's you're getting more work for whatever the reason may be. And then when said client or clients realize that you do a great job, then you get more work out of it.
yeah, but then on the flip side, also I have gotten into a job where I've lost my ass on it because everything that just turned to shit. And
No, that's
it's
true.
one of those things that's out of my control. It didn't turn to shit because of like lack of prep on my work, on my end, or quality control.
And
or
those are
anything
things
like
that you
It's-
cannot change. Those are changes that you were not expecting that you
exactly,
did not change.
and that's where I'm like kind of alludes back to I'm forced to accept change and kind of take it on the chin. I don't have the ability. Like if we swap places with work for a week and you got into a bigger job, you'd call me by noon freaking the fuck out because you're like, I know how long it's going to take me to do X, Y, and Z, and I base that number off of perfection with like no hiccups, no issues. So I know that if I get in to do a regular sized bedroom and it's just walls, no issues, no nothing, from the minute I walk into that room to the minute I walk out is an hour and 15 minutes. Start to finish, everything's done, and I'm leaving. That's perfect with no issues. I've also went in and done an 8x10 room, and it took me 2 days because as I'm painting, this comes up and that comes up, or the homeowner wants to talk, and so I've got to stop, or they're asking me questions about this, or they don't like the paint, or whatever the hell the case may be, for an hour and 15-minute job to turn into an all-day headache.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have the ability just to kind of know what my day is really going to entail. I know the outline of it. I know the kind of the shell of my day, but that's just like when I was doing the
Your
big job.
normal routine, like from start to finish, wake up, and then your entirety of the day, and then you go to bed. The majority of that outside of your day-to-day work doesn't really change.
No, and that
For the
that's
most part, it
also-
doesn't.
No, and that's also because I know I'm also really weird about time. Like, if I've got a bunch of stuff that I need to get done, if it's 2:00 and I still have a whole bunch of shit to do, then I'm like, I still get it done, but I kind of get a little bit more stressed out because I know that the day's coming to an end where I got to go get the kid, and then it's shutting off all of the working on future plans or doing stuff or getting all this shit and running around done, because then it's picking the kid up, getting dinner done, playing with him until bedtime, bath and bed.
Right.
And then at it's what the hell am I going to do at 9 o'clock at night? Like, I mean, stuff around here is different because that's when I normally sit down and like I'll edit videos or record videos or do whatever content wise or just take the night off or we hang out or whatever it is. But
Or we podcast.
Hmm?
Or we podcast.
so day to day wise, I kind of know what my schedule's like for the most part, but I'm also perfectly fine if it just doesn't happen. Like it doesn't. I don't get like jerked off about it, and like, will I get annoyed by it? Yeah, because if there's shit that I either want to get done or I know I need to get done, done in a timely manner, and I'm not able to get it done in a timely manner, that's when I get annoyed because I'm all about efficiency. Like if my efficiency gets fucked up, that's when I start getting pissy. Because
So what about, let's veer into the topic of what you were going for as your long term. Is that what you said? Long term? Let's
What do you
veer
mean?
in there.
for like change and stuff, like major
Yeah.
change.
That's what you said you wanted to hit on.
Oh, I love it. I'm the outlier in that situation.
What was your question? You said you were going to ask us a question.
Oh, how do you guys deal with like? So I know, like,
I was reeling you back in. That's what I was doing.
I guess just like large scale change, like overall changing as a person. How do you guys feel about that? Does that scare you? Because I know 90% of people know that like change is normally scary for people, like
Yeah.
moving or getting a new job or starting a new career, or going back to work or starting a new business or whatever, or just in general looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing that you need to change because your life's not where you want it to be, and you know that the person that you have to become for that outcome is not who you are right now. Like how do you kind of process that? Does that stop you in your tracks and scare you like most people? Or do you
Do you
kind of
wanna go?
accept it and get excited for it?
Yeah, so like for me personally, like I got very complacent with my last job because my goal was to find a job where I could have more stability because, you know, my goal was find somewhere where I could have healthcare, have somewhere where I could grow in the long term. I was working at a very small owned, you know, office. I won't go into detail about it, but I loved the owners. I loved the people that I worked with. Loved it. Like, became monotonous, but it was like a comfortable type of monotony where it was just peaceful. Like, I knew what was going to happen. Of course, you'd throw in like, the random customers every now and again, but I became very complacent and I forgot my goal. I lost insight. I could no longer grow where I was at. There's only so far you can grow in a small business. There's nowhere for me to move up.
Right.
So, and it didn't really hit me until Corey, you know, sat me down and was like, what happened to you wanting to find somewhere where you can have a little bit more stability, or what happened to you wanting to be able to find, you know, healthcare and do all these things. I became so complacent because of the people that I was around. And so having to think about having to change jobs, I cried. I like broke down. I was like, but I love it here. Like, I could care less about making more money. I could care less about, I became so complacent, and I was like, well, there's no more for me to grow. Like,
Yeah.
obviously when you have a job and you go somewhere, you want to be able to not only evolve as a person, like grow as a person, but you also want to be able to like grow within the company. You want to be able to like move up and, you know, grow within that business. And I
Right.
just hit that point where I could no longer grow. I could no longer do anything. It was just, I'm stuck. So having to go out of that comfort zone, having to make that change has, you know, looking back on it, has done me wonderful things. I mean, like, I've been able to move up. I've been able to have more stability. I've been able to make more connections, not only within my work environment, but also with people there. Like, I've made connections, and I feel like I'm able to grow more.
Yeah.
So just having to face that change, like going from having that meltdown of like, I don't want to change. I'm good. I'm comfortable. No, I'm good. No, I'm good. Having to like face that fear of change and having to like hit it head on and kind of adapt to that like starting a new job. You get all those.
It kind of
butterflies
happened
and
for you very
emotions.
abruptly, though.
It
Like
did.
very abruptly.
Yeah, very fast. It's like you want these things, right? These are things that you have set for yourself as a goal. Like you want these things, but then when you're faced with it, it's like, all right, here you go. Here's the door. It's open. It's like, am I ready? Am I ready for that change? So you kind of just have to hit it head on, like be able to grow within that change. You have to know where you want to be, and if you're not willing to make that change, you're never gonna grow as a person. So you kind of have to like accept the change and deal with it.
I agree.
Okay. Sorry, I had to swap the batteries out on this. So back to
Lainey.
what? Well, yeah, but so back to what you were kind of getting at is, so that kind of made me realize that 99% of the time people are terrified of like major change, but I actually, now that I think about it the way that you said it, I don't think that they're actually scared of change. It's just complacency.
You made a good
because
point, ma'am.
I was in the same boat when I was, before I went back to working for myself, like before we had the kid, because I started working doing maintenance at that apartment complex. I was only going to be there for like my slow season, and then it was super easy. I liked everybody I worked with, and then I was there for fucking 4 years, and I was the biggest asshole at the end of those 4 years because I realized that I'd pissed away 4 years of nothing, and was literally making like 18 cents more than I was 4 years prior, with still saying I want to do this, that, and the other, and not doing a single fucking thing.
You weren't growing.
No, because it was easy. I enjoyed getting up and going to work. It was easy. I liked everybody I was around. My days didn't.
Except your wife at work.
Well, I mean
I'm just kidding.
that's
Just
because
kidding.
we never really like made it known. I mean, everybody knew, obviously, but
They
like,
didn't know at the
this-
same
thi-
time.
I also had the respect behind it because this is your career. That was just a job for me
I know.
with the field that you were in. That's your career. I'm not going to jeopardize your career, but it was so. So before I get into my ideas on change and stuff, what are your takes on it? Because I'm again the outlier in this situation from everybody else when it
My
comes
eyes
to like
twitching.
massive change.
My eyes twitching. Sorry. So, for me, I don't know. The answer is not I don't know. It's just how I started the sentence. I don't think that change is scary, but change is scary at the exact same time. So like when I went from leasing to assistant, that was kind of scary, but it wasn't scary because I was already helping the assistant that we had at the time do said topics or
Well-
said tasks. So like that really wasn't a big deal. And then when I left, the good example here, when I was an assistant and me and the manager at the time were like, oh my gosh, we want a change. Like we know that the property is about to sell. Like this was a known topic. And I remember me and the manager sitting down, we were having a long golf cart ride around the property, walking apartments, and we were like, oh my goodness, we want to change. Like this is so, I don't want to say boring because our industry is not necessarily boring, but it was so,
Repetitive.
yes. And then the new company came in, and that was not the change that any of us wanted. It was horrible. And then I left.
Yeah.
And then I went to school. And for me, that wasn't scary. Like leaving my career, going to school wasn't scary. The financial part of it was scary because I was not working, and I've never not worked since I was of the age to work. I've never done that. So that was scary. But the going to school part was not scary because I love school. And then I graduated and I went back to what I was doing. And that part of change was kind of, honestly, that part of the change was more scary than going to school itself because I was getting back into what I left because I hated the company that I was working for, and I was working for them again. But the opportunity presented itself at that time. Like the timing then was just what needed to be at that time. And then I was given another opportunity to be a manager, which is what I am now. And for me in my managerial role, career wise, I think that change does not scare me in a managerial role in my career because to me, now change in like policies and things like that that I think are silly sometimes. And when you're in this industry, you just kind of think things are silly sometimes, not all the time, but those types of changes, okay, sure. But in the grand scheme of change within my career, my day to day, I don't think that like it doesn't scare me. I take on new tasks every day. As a from leasing assistant to manager, I've grown and I've changed as a person a lot. I am nowhere near the person I was when I was leasing at the debaucherous property that we were at. Like I would not handle situations that happen where I am now the way that I handle them now if it had not been for me growing within the change of each position that I had and growing within different companies that I had worked for within that. So career wise, that step is a little scary, but the change as a whole, I don't think so because complacency is you never grow when you're complacent. If you're not
Yeah.
being challenged, you're not growing. And when you're challenged, that's because things are changing.
Now, so I want to be the devil's advocate. Take your career out of it because I feel like you're
The majority
You-
of my life
well,
is
no.
what I do.
Well, I know that, but your view on change is skewed from that aspect because you love what you do.
Oh, sure.
So, but at the flip side, if you would go back to day one of starting in this career, where you said, okay, in 9 years you have to do A, B, and C to change into this person to be a successful manager, that would scare the shit out of you. But as a whole, when it comes to like after you left school and you had to go back, that was not scary because you love what you do. So I think that
It was scary in the sense that I felt like I was taking a step back instead of progressing. But overall,
which I mean, that's I remember having a lot of conversations with you about that because that's what you kind of felt like because you wanted to kind of get out of this and start something brand new.
but I feel like as a
altogether.
whole, the decision that I made and that the two of us made for me to get back to what I was doing was the right decision at the right time. But if you asked me the question that you asked me, if I were to look at myself as leasing and be like, you have to change and you have to do X, Y, and Z to get to said current position, I don't know that it would have scared me. I probably just would have told you it wouldn't have happened. Because I feel like the change for me that I have just career wise, I'm not talking personal at the second. I don't feel like a lot of the changes within me that have happened career wise, I've really noticed them. I feel like they've just happened and I haven't really noticed that I've changed, if you will. Like I can look back now and realize that I've changed. But I don't think if you had said you need to do this, this, and this, that I would have been. Am I too loud?
Yeah, it was starting to peak a little bit, so but you're
Okay.
good.
I don't think that I would have been scared, really. I just probably would have looked at you and laughed at me like that ain't gonna happen, because I don't feel like I've recognized the things that have happened until I look back at it. But
Yeah.
personally, I'm gonna speak on our relationship for a second. I am a very different person than I was almost a decade ago. And you are too, in a lot of aspects. We were kids. I mean, we were babies. Our outlooks on life as a whole have changed.
To a degree.
Well,
I'm
a lot
still the
of
same degenerate that I was where I've got
yes, a lot of
ridiculous size
yours
goals, but
have, not they've changed, but they haven't changed. It may be the same level of goal. It may have just shifted a little
Yeah,
bit
it
to
just-
something a little different.
yeah.
But we've grown a lot in our relationship as a whole and as people. Like I'm nowhere near that. How old was I?
22.
22-year-old kid, when we started dating, my goals and my dreams in life are very different than what they would have been then.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not anywhere near that person. We're a lot, we're the same in a lot of ways, but also different. And
Yeah.
like you were talking about earlier, your friends that they looked in the mirror and was like, I don't like that person looking back at me. There are days that personally, not relationship anymore, that I wake up and I'm like, I do not like that person looking back at me. I still got some baby fat from having little man hanging on. But then there's days that I wake up and like, I probably don't look any different. I don't know. Maybe I do. I have no idea. I mean, I just look like me to me. And I'm like, dang, I'm fine. Like, I got a nice body. Like, I'm super happy. But I also know that I don't work out anymore. I mean, I'm just being honest about it. Like, I don't work out anymore. You know, I sit behind a computer all day. I don't walk as much during the day as I used to. But I also know that there are days that I'm like super happy with me. And then there's some days that like I'm not super happy with me. And I know that there are things that I can do personally to change that.
Yeah. But it's also, it comes from like how uncomfortable it makes you ultimately.
Yeah.
Like,
And a
if
lot
you-
of
if
times
you're-
it
if it's not, I don't mean to cut you off, but if you're not uncomfortable with it, then you're not gonna make the change. If it's
Right.
not one of those things that like you wake up and it just eats your ass every single day.
And there are days that
Yeah.
it does, and I can tell the days that it does, my work day is very different, even though you're never supposed to take, home to work and work home, however the cliche saying goes, but I can tell those days are very different for me. But I also am not 100% happy with me, but I'm for the most part pretty happy and pretty confident with who I am as a human being.
You're content with it. Not content in where you're just kind of like accepting it and it is
Not
what it
like
is, but,
complacent.
you're-
Yeah, not complacent.
you're-
Yes. I'm content with me. I don't, not every aspect of me, like you and I were talking about doing weekly workouts. I don't have the drive to get up and go to the gym by myself anymore. It's not that I can't push myself. I can. I
getting
did it
started.
for years. I would feel much better about you and I going outside, doing a, hour workout or whatever, and then in a little bit of time hopping back into me going to the gym by myself like you do. That was it. That's all I had. I kind of went blank for a
Sometimes-
second. I'm sorry.
Sometimes change is a necessary evil.
Yes.
In the sense of like, you can't sit here and want better for yourself without having to face it
Yeah.
head on. Like,
Yeah.
having to make that first step of making that change. Like, if you know, like, all right, you have a little bit of a drinking problem, but then you never do anything about it, like, you're not willing to make that change, then how do you expect to grow as a person? Like, for me, I said it last week or maybe the week before, where like I did have a drinking problem. Like, I look at myself in the mirror, like, okay, so what are we gonna do? But then you had to kind of be like, okay, well, what am I gonna do to get out of that? What am I gonna
Yeah.
change about myself, or what am I gonna change about the habits that I'm doing to make that change, make that next step? It's like, it's a necessary evil in a way. Not that change is evil, but for some, like me, it is.
Yeah.
What
for
do
you in that situation, it was.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, that's how you looked at it.
Oh yeah, and I was like, no, I don't want to change who I am. But like, then you look at it, really deeply look at it, and you're just like, okay,
I think for a lot of people facing that is more just because like they get so attached to the story that they've made up around themselves for like their identity and stuff, that like once you get an attachment to whatever identity you've kind of placed on yourself, like trying to give that up is very difficult.
yeah,
But what a lot of people also don't realize when it comes to like changing who you are fundamentally, like it's all just a survival mechanism from your brain. Like that's kind of the cool part to look, because I mean like, so like backstory behind
the itch.
this is, so I've been in like the personal development space for coming up on 15 years now, and like I've learned from a lot of the greats in the industry, and I've studied under them, I've worked with them, like I've been very fortunate to be put in positions to like not just kind of talk out of my ass, but it's like a lot of like self personal development and then just as a whole. So like seeing it from that aspect, change when it comes down to it is really only scary because that's how your brain chemistry works.
Yeah.
Because your brain cannot differentiate the unknown. They don't know what it is, and it's just goes back to like our core survival tendencies to where if you're hunting saber-toothed tigers and shit and there's this tunnel, you don't know what's in that tunnel, so immediately it's to save you because there could be a predator in there that will eat you. So it's like, okay, yeah, you know what, this field's good enough, like I can see the other field, but I don't know what's in between here and there, so I'm just gonna, it's all good, like we're just gonna stay here.
Right.
And now obviously we don't have those things, but still that same mechanic is still ingrained in us as people. So once you kind of realize that the only reason you're scared of changing who you are fundamentally is because your brain makes up scenarios of what could go wrong and all the shit that could happen to keep you here because it's very predictable. That's why like a lot of people will fall into the same traps of doing the same shit day in and day out because their brain is now conditioned to, this is all comfortable, this will keep us alive, so we're just going to stay on this path because what we want could involve pain and that could kill us. So we're going to kind of tap the brakes on that and just kind of stay here.
Yeah.
Like once you kind of start learning about all this and you realize that all the what ifs of like the worst case scenarios are literally just to make sure that you're not getting eaten.
Yeah.
Like change is super easy. And that, I think that for me personally was the biggest reason as to why, or what's helped me with like massive change and stuff like that. But I didn't mean to cut you off. You can.
No, you're good.
So
That's pretty much it.
But I know like for me personally, like massive change and changing is fundamentally like I thrive off that. Like
Yeah.
I'm peachy with it. Like I love, and that just stems from like the personal development side of me because it's also like a big thing as to what I teach because I've been very fortunate to be able to teach hundreds of people about this stuff and like all been like online seminars and stuff like that. But I mean, if I can hold a room with 800 people in there for 2.5 hours and they're all engaged the entire time and it's not a big drop off, obviously there's something behind it. Like for me personally, but I love evolving.
What do you-
And
Go ahead.
no, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, what do you think for the both of you is the biggest change you've had in your life as an entire whole?
Over the last 10 years has been definitely the biggest change, and not always in a good way. Not like that has nothing to do with like you or like our family or anything like that. That is just 100% me personally.
I mean, like
when-
the number one thing, like you can pinpoint one thing.
accepting the fact that I threw away everything that I worked for years and years and years, and my entire life's purpose, I pissed it away, and it is solely on me. Accepting that and understanding it and moving on from that, and not waking up every day resenting myself.
Have you moved on from it?
Yeah, I've accepted it, and I mean, I don't think I'll ever really move on from it. It's always going to be like a thorn in my side.
But that's like a thriving point. Sorry, Dooch just stood up on the couch. That's like a thriving point. Will you make sure his couch is good? That's like a thriving point to help you go forward, though. What about you? He's going to fix the couch. Sorry, in the middle of me trying to talk to him, which was my mistake.
I don't know. I guess for me, like the biggest change for me personally, like this is going to be like really deep and
okay.
raw, but losing my father was like my biggest change. Like having that one person in my life where like that was my person, you know what I'm saying? Like having that there and then losing it. Suddenly having to like regain who you are, like, and understanding that you can't change everything. Like, you can't prevent things from happening. Like, the scary part is, like, oh, well, if I would have done this, I wouldn't have maybe that wouldn't have happened, or if I would have done this, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Like, having to accept that there are things in life that we physically cannot change. So having to regain who I am as a person after losing him, like having to become not the head of the household, but in a sense, I mean, kind of, right?
Right.
Like having to be the rock for everyone else around you, and having to move forward from that, because that really rocked me, but you kind of like stuff it down until like later on when you can like fully release all of that. But that for me just changed everything. And you always sit here and go, well, what if he was still alive? What would have happened? What could have affected my path differently? But then having to accept that one thing that changed my life has helped me to grow as a person in a way, kind of figuring out what I can handle. Like, you learn so much about yourself when losing someone. You learn that maybe things didn't go the way that you wanted it to, but having to deal with the repercussions of that. Like, I couldn't change the fact that he's gone, but having to accept that change and move forward and go, okay, well, what can I do now? What can I do for my family? What can I do for myself? What can I do as a person to continue on? And, just deal with that kind of thing. So for me, like, my biggest change was, losing him, because like the normality of our day-to-day life as a family just changed. So having to deal with that, coming home to him not being there, it's just, you have to learn to deal with it and just figure yourself out. Like, okay, well, he's not here, and I don't have him to be like, all right, well, this is what you're going to do. You have to be able to, like, sit down and go, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And you can't sit here and go, well, if he were here, I could have done this or I could have done that. It's just like you have to reel it in and go, all right, well, what can I do now?
So the one thing that changed your life, you couldn't change.
Yeah, essentially.
I like it. I don't like the situation.
Right.
But I like the point there.
Yeah.
I think mine would have been becoming a mom. Because I
Never wanted kids. You had never had any intention
No.
of becoming a mom.
I never wanted to be a mom. I was never the kid that sat down and was like, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have kids and I'm going to live in a white picket house with a white house with a picket fence. And that was never my life. I could have cared less about that. I met you and then I was like, oh yeah, I like him enough to get married to him. I mean, it's, it's cool. It's fine.
That was a mistake.
I love you. You know it.
Back up just a little bit.
But I don't know what to do with my hands. That's why I'm so close to the mic.
I'm just saying, you get too close because then it starts getting real
I'll
loud.
just sit on them. It's fine. But I think definitely for me, it was becoming a mom because I never wanted to have children. And let me tell you right now, I would do anything in the world for that little small domestic child, little domestic terrorist in there. And yes, people say that you would die for your kid. It's such a cliche saying, but will you live for your kid? Mm-hmm. Yes, I do that every day. Sorry, the dog was attacking the cat. Well, that's good for some entertainment there.
Yeah, I can't wait for people's ears to bleed on that one.
Sorry.
I'll try to pull the levels down there.
But yes, no. But I wake up and I live for my kid every day. I feel like I do what I need to do for me and my family and my child every day. And I would 100% not change being a parent. But it was never in the cards for me. Like, it was never a thought in my mind that I would have been a parent. Like, ever. Best thing that's happened to me, it's taught me a lot about me. It's taught me more patience than I thought it would ever teach me. Like, a lot more patience than I thought it would ever teach me. But that is, for me, the one thing in my entirety of 32 years that has changed me. Changed me.
So kind of going back into like not really fearing change, let me ask you this. When you found out you were pregnant.
Good. Carry on.
Okay, so my question with you being like, you say you're good with change, but you never wanting to be a mother and then suddenly having that moment when you found out you were pregnant of, all right, yeah, you're going to be a mom now. Like, how did you handle that change of having to suddenly go, okay, well, crap. Something that I didn't want to do, never wanted to become, having to deal with that change of having to, I guess, deal with that.
First off, when I took the test, I knew I was pregnant before I even took the test. We both knew. We just.
I mean, we were also trying, like, actively trying.
So, yes.
So we came to the conclusion that we wanted to have a kid prior to, like,
it wasn't
us finding out.
Yeah, it wasn't like a super long time of like, no, not us trying, but like the conversation was very, okay, if we're going to do this, like we're going to do this now. And somehow I magically agreed. I'm just kidding. No, we actually had the conversation and I was like, okay. But what I mean by like, I never wanted to be a mom was like, and I know everyone says there's plenty of fish in the sea. If it hadn't have been Reno, it would have been no one.
Right.
And like, I'm not making this about Reno, but I am for a second. If it had not have been Reno, it literally would have been no one.
Well, I think that also
Like-
stems from, I don't think it's me necessarily. It's
No, it
just
is.
No, it's not, though. It's the fact that, one, I've always wanted to be a dad. And, like, so me wanting to be a dad and you not wanting kids, we had that talk early on. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I will survive not being a dad. Like, it's not going to crush me. It's not going to, like, cause any issues. Like, I sat down with myself and kind of came to terms with that. Like, not where it's like, oh, well, woe is me kind of coming to terms. But I'm like, okay, yeah, like, kind of weighed my options. Like, is this really what I want to do? Or is this kind of a end-all type thing? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm fine with not being a dad. Like, did I want to? Yes, but I'm also great with kids. And I
Yeah.
think that all of our friends had fucking kids. And I think just the more that you saw me interact with kids and kind of saw that, kind of open that up a little bit. But I don't think it's me necessarily. I think it's just the fact that it was the culmination between, like, your feelings for me and then seeing that.
Well, and that's what I
if
mean
that
by
makes
like,
sense.
if it wasn't you, it wouldn't have been anyone else. What I mean by that is, and I promise I will answer your question, is I had been in other relationships, pretty serious relationships, of people that did want kids and did not want kids. And I said absolutely negative ghostwriter. And it's just the connection that you and I have, I guess, was obviously very different. We're married, but you know, it was a no with anyone else. And that's what I mean by if it wasn't you, it wouldn't have been anyone else. That's what I meant by that.
Now, so second question real quick. Do you think that's because of my personality and, like, my drive for, I guess, life in general, my outlook on a lot of things? Do you think that was kind of a, not deciding factor, but a bigger factor in your decision to where, like, yeah, I could see myself having a kid with him? Because I know a lot of the guys that you've been with, and I'm the polar opposite of all of them.
Yes, to some degree, but you and I, we're very polar opposite, as we've discussed previously. But you and I connect, even though we pretty much agree to disagree on most things in life. We connect on a much deeper level of life as a whole than I had really ever connected with anyone. And that's what I mean. If it wasn't you, it would have not been with anyone else. And so, yes, to pull off of what Reno was saying, we had been trying, and I don't mean for like literally years, but you know, we had the conversation, and then we were like, okay, well, we're just gonna try and see what happens. And we were both to the point that it should have happened, and we were both going to go to, it was around your birthday, if it had not have happened, we were both going to go to the doctor and like figure out, okay, who was the problem? Like, is it me or is it him? You know, like, who's the problem?
I for sure thought that it was me. 100%. And that's just from my past with like bodybuilding and stuff like that. I wholeheartedly believe that.
And I had
I'd
also
screwed
had
something up at some point.
I had also had female issues
Yeah.
before too. So I mean, it could have literally been either of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, had no idea. And then I just randomly decided we were going to take a test. And before I even decided, like, I 100%, and I can't remember truthfully if I said it out loud or not.
You did, because it was...
But I knew before I even took the test, and it wasn't because I had missed my period and this, that, and the third, or I had butterflies, or... No, I knew. I 100% knew. And I will tell you, I have no motherly instincts. I am not a coddly person. I am not like... Let me rephrase. I do now. I did not have the motherly instincts, like, at all. Even prior to having a kid, and I had worked with kids for years. And then, like, when he was born, and like, I never had motherly instincts. So for me to just, I knew before I even twinkled on a stick that I was pregnant.
I mean, also,
So-
really, the only reason that you took a test is because it was on my mom's birthday.
Yes, that was the reason
Yeah.
that we took
Because she was gonna
tan.
take a test at some point anyway, but we decided, like, oh, we'll just do it today, because if you are, that'd be a cool birthday present for her.
Right.
And
That's
it was.
literally the only reason that she took a test that day.
So I guess my question, I guess,
Did it
is,
scare me?
Yeah, like having that mindset. No, not necessarily like scary, like finding out because you guys had, you know, obviously planned it. I guess it's like that
The realization.
mindset change of going from I don't want to be a mother. I don't want to be a mother. When you finally like decided, okay, all right, but let's do this. Did that that change of that mindset? Did that not scare you? Like
When he was 6 months old.
so it hit you like later on, like afterwards, like you were kind of just like in this little, not like
I had horrible postpartum depression, and we are not going to talk about that on this episode because I do not open up very often about
Yeah.
it. And that's my own mental demons. I talk about it, but I'm not going to on a podcast today. That's
No,
for a
you're
later
good, you're good.
topic.
I just kind of wanted to like
But-
figure that out, like change wise, like
For me, it literally did not go ding, 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 smack me in the dome piece until he was like 6 months old. And I think a lot of that was discussions that, very serious discussions that Reno and I had that I was not aware of. And also, my grandpa had passed away right when he was 6 months old, and I had to leave and go to Florida. It was the first time I had ever been without my child. And when you're away from something, you always hear the cliche saying of like, when you're away, like the distance makes the heart grow fonder or whatever. I think that's the saying. But like I felt like, and maybe I was wrong, I felt like I obsessively checked in. I don't know if I did, but I felt like in my brain I obsessively checked in. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I was very occupied with the task at hand of my grandpa passing.
Right.
But he passed while we were down there. It wasn't like he passed and then we went down there. We went down there and then he passed.
Yeah.
So we were very like focused on the task at hand. But I think like coming back, and I don't know, it was because it was literally right around the time of you and I having said discussion. I had also left my job to go back to school, which got pushed back. And then, you know, my grandpa passed away, like it was with like about a 2 month window, which would have been around he was like 4 to 6 months old, that it literally went ding 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 ding, that okay, your life is different now. And we were already living here. I mean, in this time frame, which is so crazy to think about, we had bought and sold a house, and like all of the things in life that change would make you realize change, right? It didn't. It did not until he was it was between 4 and 6 months. And I just say 6 months because that's when my grandpa passed. That's kind of how I
That's
remember
right
that
around the
time
time
frame.
where everything kind of like
Came
set
to a
in.
head, yeah.
Yeah, because like around that 6 month time is, I could tell when the last, I'd say 7 months kind of all sunk in, because
Like me still being pregnant and then having him, and up
yeah,
until
like
that
right
point.
towards the end, because like the last month of you being pregnant was a disaster the entire time.
Yes.
Because there was a bunch of like stuff with work for the timing, and so that was stressful because we were on this cusp where we were basically scheduling it out, so you had insurance, we weren't paying 40 grand, and then
And then
so
that did
that
not
was
work
that
out.
last month that like ate all that up, because it was constant craziness with all that back and forth with that last month. And then you had him, and then 5 days later we bought this house. 6 weeks later we closed on this house, and then 2 weeks after that our old house went on the market. We sold that same week, and then so prior to us, well, right after we moved in, I quit my job and started working for myself again. And then a couple weeks after that, you left work, you quit your job to go back to school.
And then it got pushed
George
back like
died.
2 months.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was this crazy culmination. It was probably like the most intense 6 months that you could really ask for.
Where things were constantly changing.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a lot.
we went from our old house that was fine to bringing home your first child, to buying and selling a house, both of us quitting our jobs, me starting a business from scratch again, like her quitting and not going to a different job and going back to school. On top of that, our monthly bills quadrupled, and our income was cut in half from day one. And it was, I remember talking to my
And then
supervisor before I
Papa
quit.
Passed away, which was like a huge thing for me.
Yeah, because it was unexpected. Like, it wasn't like he was sick or anything, it was an accident.
Yeah.
And so it was like this 6 month window of just intensity. And then on top of all of that into the mix, she was dealing with her stuff. And in turn, I was kind of having to deal with that. Plus, take on a bunch of other stuff because she was dealing with that. So, from my perspective, it was like the gnarliest fucking 6 months that you could possibly have.
But we survived.
Yeah, no. And, like, I never once questioned, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive? Because I knew that no matter what,
We'd figure it out.
yeah, and it also helped us having the conversations, and I remember having these conversations, and I know that there was one that your mom was present, and I could tell there was some uncomfort there because I not gave you an ultimatum, but I wasn't allowing all of these, I guess you could say, issues that you were going through. I was not going to let them consume you. And I let that be known that if I had to be the bad guy and you had to hate somebody, then it would be me. Because I knew that if I wasn't that person, then it could ruin you, like, in the long run. And I know that once she kind of put together what the last 6 months of our lives looked like, from my perspective, because your perspective was kind of skewed because you were dealing with all your issues.
It was like life was kind of gray. It was kind of fuzzy. Like I lived day to day.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm still here,
But
but
you weren't.
I was
like,
not present.
Yeah, you weren't present.
I did what I needed to do. I went through the
You
routines.
survived.
Yeah.
You were surviving for those 6 months.
And like I didn't hate you afterwards. It's the one thing that, not the one thing, but thing that
Well,
made our relationship stronger.
Yeah, and what I meant by like if you needed to hate somebody, what I meant by if that meant that, because I outright told you this was a little bit after we moved in when like people were still like kind of helping us because you're still on maternity leave and stuff, and I said like I'm giving you a window to do this on your own, and once that window closes, I'm in control of the situation. And yes, that from an outside perspective without understanding all of the details, that sounds harsh, because it's not that I didn't trust you or believe in you to be able to deal with this, but I also knew that, because we also had this conversation prior to us having the kid, and it was like, okay, if this
Her tail's
happens,
in the camera.
Hmm?
Her tail is in the camera.
if this happens, then these are kind of like the parameters of what I will allow, as bad as that sounds.
But I
So-
didn't know that I was experiencing those
No,
things.
yeah,
Like
and
I
that's
had
the thing. Like,
no idea that I didn't know that that's what was happening to me. And it's not for I'm excusing what happened.
but
I
it's
literally
also-
was living in like a fog.
No, and that's kind of why we had those conversations after a couple months, because I knew I was the only one here fully, and I also told you like before we had him that if you were to experience this stuff, I'm not gonna push, I'm not gonna prod, I'm not gonna say anything snide, nothing like that. I'm gonna let you figure it out on your own as you need to. But if it gets past a certain point to where I can tell that you need help with it without you realizing it, then that's when I was gonna kind of step in and be like, okay, I've got to take reins over this situation before it does get out of control.
Right. And that's where we were.
Yeah.
Like I had literally had absolutely no idea that I was experiencing the things that I was experiencing. Like I mean, I got up, I brushed my teeth, I brushed my hair, I went to the bathroom, I changed, I went to work. I did.
You're just going through the motions, though.
I
You're just
did
on
all
autopilot.
the thing, or I went to school or whatever said situation was. I just literally, like you said, went through the motions, and it did not hit me that my life was different.
That it had changed that much.
Mm-hmm.
That I had grown a kid, had a kid, bought and sold a house, quit a job. He quit a job, started a new business. Like none of that. Like I jokingly, like I was telling you in the maintenance man the other day. It's been a little while that like the first 6 months of his life were crazy.
Yeah.
And like it was all during COVID, mind you. That like it was all like my entire pregnancy was during COVID. That it was all crazy, but like there is so much truth to that. And I say it very lightly, like almost gloriously, because we accomplished a lot. Hindsight 2020, I didn't realize all of it at the time. I didn't realize everything that we were doing because I was just doing it. Like I
Right.
had no idea. But on a more serious matter, like it's not just a glorified thing. Like it was a real deal. And yes, we did accomplish a lot, and that's we as a unit did. And it's a lot to be proud of, but as a whole, there was a lot of dark that came from something that is now glorious and something to be proud of. A lot of dark that I had no idea of, until it was like, for a better lack of words, shit or get off the pot. And I don't mean that in a harsh way, like him being harsh to me,
Right.
But that's pretty much, for a better lack of words, what it was. And when I was like, let me clean the window with some Windex,
Yeah.
Well,
and I
that also-
realized
the
it was, whoa.
Well, also
And
the
I-
straw that kind of broke the camel's back, because it's not like you came back from Florida and you had like this epiphany of
No.
life. It was a couple weeks after when George passing like finally hit you, because once that hit you, everything hit you.
Yeah.
And that led into a couple like pretty intense weeks, because it was this realization from you of the changes that just occurred and the craziness that just occurred that you weren't really all that present for. And then that led into like oh holy shit, like this is kind of cool from everything that we just did.
Yeah.
And
Example, and I won't stay on this topic, this specific part too long. I was going through all the clothes last night, right? I was talking to you. Some of those outfits I thoroughly remember, and some of those outfits I'm like, huh? Like, he probably wore them 100 times. I mean, like, that's what babies do, right?
Right.
Like, you just throw them in clothes. Okay. Some of those outfits, like the ones that I saved, oh, yes, I remember. But some of those I'm like, did he wear that? And, like, rightfully, we have photos of it.
mm-hmm.
Like, we have 5 million photos of him. That's what parents do, okay, right? But that's just a small snippet of, like, I wasn't fully present and had absolutely no idea that I wasn't. Like,
So
literally none.
to like, I guess just kind of like finish this off was like having that realization and having to make that change in your life, that big decision. Okay, this is where I am. How am I going to go forward? Like, did you have like, was it like a scary moment for you to be like, what next? Or was it like something like you were like, all right, I'm going to go after this. I'm going to
I think it was more of when I realized what was going on, thanks to Reno, essentially. Because I didn't talk about it with anyone else, just Reno. Literally, that was it.
Wasn't always pretty, but
No, and we are here. We made it.
No, yeah, and
but
that's what
I think that I don't want to say that it was scary. Looking back and realizing that I was looking through a foggy glass was kind of scary, but the change itself was like, okay, this is what we did. All right, now I can start living again.
Mm-hmm.
And like that part. Am I really about to get emotional? Oh my gosh. Okay, what's happening, Chris? I'm about to get uncomfortable. But no, on a serious note, literally serious. I think once I realized that everything had happened and it did finally hit me, that I was like, okay, I can start living again for me, for my husband, and for my kid, and my 5,000 animals that we have. And that's not a joke. Like, I love my animals. Everyone knows that. But when I realized I could actually start living again, and like, it really wasn't a choice. Like, I kind of had to, in realizing that the change wasn't an option at that point.
it was
Like,
necessary for that to
I
happen.
was a mom and I was a wife, and I did not have an option but to change my unclean glass to a clean glass and see it for what it was, and become the person that I absolutely had to become for my husband and my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty cool. It was an incredibly wild ride, start to finish. I mean, and it still is every day, but just really, really, really strange. And I do want to hint on this because I'm the only one who has physically birthed a kid. I don't think you can do that, but I mean, if you could, let us know.
I don't think I want to try.
But I hope not. Postpartum is a real thing, and make sure you got people in your corner that can make you check yourself. I don't mean literally physically check yourself, but make sure you got people that can make you check yourself. And it doesn't happen to everyone. It literally does not happen to everyone. Postpartum may exist and may not exist for people, and it looks different for everyone, or it may just not be there. But make sure that you have someone in your corner who can literally make you check yourself and be like, hey, come back to life. Because hindsight 2020, when I realized what was going on, like I just said, that was the part that was scary. Realizing the last 6 or 7 months that had literally like almost passed me by.
So that was like your biggest point of like you could say
Change in my entire life. Yes.
So in that moment, you're like, all right, I'm gonna. So I guess for you, you said change is scary, but I think now, like, listening to that biggest point and the biggest change in your life, and what really changed you as a person, I would say you're not really scared of change.
No, change is scary in certain aspects.
In certain aspects, but like life for you, I would say.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
There are certain aspects of life, and I think that we can all agree on that. There are certain things about life in general that makes us scary for change, and some that don't. But that as a whole, because that's a huge thing. I mean, birthing a kid, first off, is a huge thing. Some people it's great for, some people it's not. But that's definitely... I wasn't scared of it when it was happening.
Right.
I was scared when I realized it and looked back on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that was moral of the entire story we just had was becoming a mom.
Yeah. In the scary moment of it all.
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
So I guess to kind of like wrap everything up is change is scary and could also be fun or thrilling for some, but having people there to kind of help you for that change, having people in your corner to help you grow and kind of sit here and talk about like, well, I've heard you talk about these things. What are you going to do to change it? I guess being able to face it head on and kind of, you know, help it to be less scary, but kind of just like face it head on. Change can be scary, can be overwhelming, but it can be evil, but it's also necessary to change. Not only as in a work life or in a family life, personal, in a mother role, in a father role, just change as a whole is
Even as a friend.
or as a friend is necessary to help us along our paths of life to get us to where we need to go or where we want to be. It's necessary. If we didn't change, if the world didn't change, if we didn't change as humans, we'd be kind of wasting it all.
Change led you to me.
And so to add on that, before we close
That was
out,
nerdy.
go like backtrack to whenever I had to bring the dog out earlier, and you were asking like what my biggest change was. I know I kind of like brushed past it to where that. So it ties into what you're saying because change.
Well, what you were talking about, let me rekindle you for a second. You were talking about the things that you feel like you wasted and that you have to look in the mirror and you have accepted them. You'll never really get over them, but you have accepted them and learned from them, I suppose. That's where you were. I just
Yeah,
want to
so like
go
to
on that.
tie into that, so like for me personally, like my biggest change was giving up like bodybuilding and stuff because that was literally my entire life. Like I gave up from 9th grade up until I was 19, 20, so like 5-6 years. And I mean to the point to where like I never partied, I never really went out. I think I can count on one hand how many times I went out and did anything. I dropped out of college for bodybuilding. Like granted I would have dropped out regardless because I hated school, but I literally left my class in the middle of class, drove back to the house, and my mom was like, "Fuck are you doing?" I was like, "I'm dropping out." Like I was getting ready for nationals. My whole plan was to become the youngest professional bodybuilder ever. And I would have done that if I would not quit, because I would have done it by the time I was 20, because I was lining myself up to do that.
Yeah.
And knowing it was also prior to or after I quit and kind of pissed it all away. Like I was very bitter about it and very angry. Like I accepted it was just my fault. Like I didn't blame anybody else, but I didn't really want to accept fully that was the case, because when your whole life revolves around something and it's in your grasp, and then you just be like, fuck it. Like, that was the hard pill to swallow. If it would have been from like an injury or something, then that would have been like, okay, yeah, you know what? It is what it is. Like, it's
Right.
one of those things, kind of chalk it up. But also knowing that, like, that was having to grow from understanding that the whole reason I got into training is, one, because my dad used to compete, so he was always trying to get me in the gym. But when I started started working out in general, it stemmed from me getting bullied, like, terribly. Like, to the point to where, like, I would beg my mom to, like, pull me out of school and be homeschooled, and, like, was terrified to go to school because I was getting my ass beat every day. And then I got into the gym and started getting a little bit more self-confidence and all that stuff, and that stemmed from self-confidence into a very aggressive demeanor, because nobody's going to hurt me anymore. Like, and I made sure of that. So very quickly, I love to fight. Like, it stemmed from polar opposites, to where I was the aggressive one. Not like I was bullying anybody, because, like, that was not my thing. But if somebody that used to, like, bully me or whatever even stepped out of line, it was game over. Like, I was scary to deal with because I was a lot stronger. I was a lot more confident. I knew how to fight now, and I could get my ass beat and keep going. Like, I can take a beating and no sweat off my back, because I had to endure that for a year. After a year of getting beat up every single day, you kind of learn how to take a punch. So the bodybuilding aspect was kind of like my safe space, in a sense, to where that was like the armor that I built up to make sure that I didn't get, like, terrorized anymore. And then that stemmed into, like, a more of a unhealthy obsession personally, because I knew that I had the capabilities to do that. I learned very quickly that, like, I am built for this. And then I ended up having people in my life that, like, I respected and looked up to also know that when they gave me a compliment, it meant that I earned it. And so every compliment that I got, like, kind of fueled that fire, to where it's like, okay, you know what? Like, I know that this is 100% possible, but I just need to do it. And then just stop doing it for literally no reason. And for a while after, I was super angry, like, not like at people, just in general, like at myself and stuff. Like, I hated myself. That's why, like I said last week, like, sometimes you got to look in the mirror and realize that you fucking hate who you're looking at. And it never really got super out of hand to where, like, I do something rash over it, because, like, I still also like attribute that to, like, my personal development stuff. Like, I went to therapy for a while over a bunch of other shit that happened in my life, and that was, like, a focal point, because she was like, you are angry. I'm like, I know, like, I'm fully aware. But she was also, she struggled with helping me, because I'm extremely self-aware to where, like, I can get myself out of any situation, like, in, like, a good way. Like, I'm never gonna kind of hit rock bottom, so to speak, because I understand everything, but I needed help. So she's like, can't really help you because you know all of the answers, you just have to implement them. So then after that, it was my focus and drive pivoted into a million different things. And then I'd see success and it was right there, and then it was out of my hands is why it all fell apart. Whether it was from somebody else screwing us over and can't do anything legally about it because the contract had a loophole in there. My hands are tied. It is what it is. I'm out hundreds of thousands of dollars at 21 years old after working for months and months and months to build something up. Saw the success and then never, like, reaped the benefits from it. And then pivoted into something else. Saw success there, but then had to stop doing that because of decisions and agreements that we made. And I'm not going to, like, I'm going to honor what I said, even though it's literally, if you give me 6 more weeks, then we're peachy. But so that was another reason. That's another thing that I'm like, okay, that's another one that's on me. And then it's just multiple things kind of compounded into me being just an angry fucking person. like all inward. Like I couldn't. It was to the point for months. Like if I was showering or whatever, I wouldn't look in the mirror. I wouldn't. I'd get fully dressed and brush my hair and shit, brush my teeth and get the fuck out. Like I would not look at myself. I wouldn't be on camera. Like I was on camera like because I streamed and stuff like that. But I mean, and then it kind of. I don't know really when I fully accepted it. It hasn't been that long, honestly. It's been maybe a year. Because
We had long conversations.
yeah, and that was kind of a catalyst to me kind of biting the bullet and accepting the fact that like it's over and you need to accept it, move on, and you can excuse me, you might not be able to have this goal, but you can still achieve that goal in a different fashion. And
Yeah.
also like now being a dad and shit like that, it was kind of one of those things where it's like the end of my rope. Like I don't have any other choice but to bite the bullet and do what I got to do, because like I've always had a vision of myself in total and as a dad since I was little of what I wanted to look like and be like and act like, and I was so far from that person, and I already had a kid. Like he's soaking everything in, so I don't really have the ability to keep putting shit off. And like granted, it was like, and it's not just like physical stuff either. Like the gym is a big part of it, but the gym also is like my de-stressor, because I internalize a lot of shit and I take a lot of stuff on my shoulders and I don't ask for help or don't talk about anything, or like the battle that's going on upstairs, like for anything in general. And taking that away from me, I started to get more aggressive in general, where like I'd lose my patience with him, I'd lose my patience with her. It's not like I'd snap and scream at him or
Just had a short fuse.
yeah, like I would get annoyed, and then but it's been for the last couple years to where like I'd get a hold of it and start working on myself, but then something would happen that would kind of take that away from me. I mean, I'd get back into doing everything and kind of putting myself mentally to the person that I needed to be, and then I'd get injured. So then I'd have to stop going to the gym, and then I'd have to stop doing a lot of the things that I enjoyed doing that kind of kept me sane. So then all I did was sit in my head and internalize all of this, and it ate me up even more. And then I'd get back into doing all of this stuff, and then it'd get taken away from me from another injury. And then I had a cancer scare, and then it turned into a bunch of external forces that were out of my control, and that really started to piss me off, not because I wasn't in control, but because it was 100%, in my eyes anyway, karma for me pissing away opportunities and other people's time and effort and energy spent on me, where I just spit in their face essentially. And so like having to accept the fact that like these external forces that weren't really in my control, I really like manifested them into my life. Like obviously like in different ways, not that like, oh, I'd manifested a cancer scare because I gave up my dreams. It's not
But your anger caused things to manifest.
Yeah, because it was just and it never turned into woe is me to where like, oh my god, my life's terrible. It was more of like, this is just one more fucking thing to add onto the plate.
Yeah.
And
So how did that, to wrap it all up, how did that, not how, I guess, what was the big change from then a year ago to now?
sitting down, and I remember sitting down one day that I was like at home, and I was like, I do all the fucking time, talking to myself out loud, and I just outright said like, I fucking despise who you are, like disgusted with who I was and the person that I was. And it just kind of hit me to where it's like, okay, then fucking change. Like, if you're that miserable, you've got two options. Either you're not going to be around anymore, or sack the fuck up. And obviously, I'm not going to pick the first option, because I'm not going to put that pain on anybody else. So it's
Right.
like, okay, instead of hating yourself for not being who you are, hate yourself for how hard you're working and hate yourself for how fucking hard everything is to get to where you want to be and start growing and start implementing all the shit that you know what to do. Because I
Right.
have all the answers. It's just about putting the work in, but it was also coming off of being complacent for 4 years where it was like, oh, I'm peachy, I can get through the days, it's really not that bad, I don't really think about anything.
Your life is very different now
Mhm.
from a year ago.
Yeah. And it's just, that's a big thing. Like, sometimes all you've got is like the negative and the nasty and the shit that people don't want to talk about.
And
If
it
that's-
worked for you.
That'll work for a lot of people. I mean,
I'm talking about specifically right
yeah,
now.
specifically for me, that worked for me because I didn't have any positives to pull from it.
Yeah.
Because I got into such a negative space that any positive that I had, I could spin it around into something terrible. And that's just because that's what I turned into.
We got to wrap it up.
And so I guess that's like the biggest takeaway for me is when it comes down to it, if you're not happy with how you are or who you are or the person that the goals, if your goals are way out of reach, it feels, and you need to be somebody different, then become that person. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun. But realistically, as long as you put your foot down and say, I know that I could do this, then it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So then you just need to kind of be uncomfortable or get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's all
Yeah.
part of it. If you're not willing to get after it, because and especially now it should be a big motivator for most people that now is the easiest time in the fucking history of humanity to become wildly successful.
Yeah.
So kind of just run with it. Sometimes all you've got is the negative to work with, so use what you got.
Yeah.
And but I'm also, last little thing, I'm also the outlier because I love like massive change like that. Like the 6 months after we had him, I was on cloud 9 the whole time because it was a wild ride.
Right.
And for most people that would be like traumatizing basically because it's not only just like a culmination of like massive life shifts, but it's 10,000 of them at one time on top of having to keep a level head to make sure that she's okay and he's okay. So I'm doing more to make sure that he's good, but doing more to make sure that she doesn't lose her shit because she's dealing with her stuff. And that whole 6 months, I was happy as hell because, like, I love the chaos. I love the, like, even my bad days at work, yes, I bitch about them because it's annoying, but it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Just, like, starting my own shit, I love it. So,
Change is good. Change is bad. Change is happy. Change is sad. Change is emotional, angry, evil, glorious.
I think it's the tits, but
Any word that you can describe change is that for each individual person.
mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, change is good.
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
in every situation. Controllable change is good.
Right.
Um,
But it's also necessary.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Everyone has the potential to be their best, and if you're not doing something, then it's up to you to make that change to
Mm-hmm.
be your best.
Yep.
I think this was good, friends.
Yeah.
We're clocking out.